are in Parashat Chukat, and one might say that the main theme of the parasha is the death of Miriam. But many other things happened also. And one of the major events that happened, of course, is the Moshe Rabbeinu hitting the rock, and the entire event with what's called Mei Meriva, the water of dispute, which in itself is a very not clear event, this whole thing with the water. So today, basically, I want to talk about two very important insights that this whole event, this entire encounter can teach us. And the first one is like the entrance to the main foundation of life, of success. And we all want to have success in our own life. Some people feel their time is over, so at least I wasn't successful, then maybe my kids should be successful, or my grandkids. First of all, that's not a good attitude. You can be successful all your life. It's never a lost opportunity. But the fact is that at the end of the day, we all want to be successful. I don't know anybody who opens a business and says, you know, I want this business to go down and I don't want to make any money here. I mean, and that's just in business. But with another thing, you don't start anything in your life with the intention of it to be a disaster. So everybody wants to be successful in what they do, whether it's with their physical activities, or writing a book, or climbing a mountain, or whatever it is. Our nature is to be successful. And why? Because we want to achieve something, and we want to have a good life, and we want to live a life of achievements. That's a natural thing with each and every one of us. So some people are more driven, and some people are less, and some people are lazy. But at the end of the day, everybody wants to be successful. Some are willing to put a lot of hard work, some not. But the insight that I want to take from this parasha, one of them, of course, is the main foundation, the principle of how to do that. The second thing that I want to take from this parasha is that every week that we talk about the parasha, there's always going to be one commentary that will ask a question. Sometimes there's going to be two commentaries asking a question. And that's really how you learn the parasha. If you don't ask questions, I don't believe you're really learning, because if you just go through the text and questions don't come up, then you're not focusing. The good students are the ones who ask all the questions. There was one student here once that in an inappropriate way disturbed the classes, but he had so much questions. And the rest of the people in the class says, you're disturbing the class. So the conclusion was, yes, ask the questions. The questions are amazing, but just ask them at the end. But he had so much questions that the conclusion was that he's the only one who's listening. He's the only one who's actually paying attention, because if you just nod, either, you don't understand anything, so you have to pretend you understand. And the ones who ask questions are the ones to understand. I don't understand what's the meaning of this, and why does this happen? And that's really how we start all our classes. We present a lot of questions. How can it be? I mean, we want to learn something out of what the Torah is teaching me. So in this week's parasha, something interesting happens. That, like I told you, in some cases in the Torah, a question will arouse. Sometimes 2 or 3 commentaries will ask a question. In this week's parasha, there's a question that everybody's asking. There's not one commentary that skipped that question. And not only commentaries, any person who reads it. And I'll tell you in a second, what are these questions? I'll tell you mainly more important is what's the problem with this question that arouses in this week's parasha that everybody is asking, because it's shaking the foundation of our belief. I'll tell you in a second what's the few question, but we have to understand the severity of why this question is so important. is that A, it can shake a person's foundation of emunah. Now, if you believe in something, and let's now narrow down the options. You believe in Hashem. How would you behave or conduct yourself if something will come in your life and shake in the entire foundation of your belief in Hashem? That can be detrimental. All your life you believe in the Creator, you believe in the Torah. Some event will happen to a point that will be so powerful that can question your emunah. I mean, how many people do actually happen to them and they step back? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't believe there's a Creator. And if there is, I don't believe in Him, and etc. So not only that it can shake in our emunah, it can shake in our belief in the fact that there's justice in this world. Because, in many of our prayers we call and we mention the Master of the universe as the God of righteousness, of justice. And if I see injustice happening, wait a minute, so if it happened there, who says it's not going to happen with me? And more than that, we take as our Father to be a merciful God, Av HaRachamim, Av HaRachaman. So if we see a certain act that will discount it, then again, that can shake in one's person's belief. Wait a minute, I believe that the Master of the universe is merciful. Suddenly I see something going on here. Maybe that's not the case. Now you might be the one that their emunah is so solid like a rock, and you're good to go. 99% of the population of this world, their emunah is not solid. Their belief in the Master of the universe is not solid at all. All it takes is one little diversion, and whoa, suddenly I don't believe so much in the Creator. So you might be in that 1%, maybe I'm exaggerating, 2%, that their belief in Hashem, doesn't matter what's going to happen, nothing's going to move them. They believe in the Master of the universe. They might not be happy with every little act or with every little thing that happens, but they believe in Hashem like a rock. Most people don't have this emunah. All it takes is a failure in your business, or a date that didn't work out, or something. Suddenly, I don't like this God anymore. Life doesn't work out how I plan. So we have to also take into consideration many people, their backbone of their belief in the existence of the Creator is not so strong. All you need is something that the Torah will show you, some doubt. Whoa. That will explain how many times our sages, commentaries, they ask all these questions, not because because they don't have the answer, is to arouse the curiosity of many people. Because if you start asking questions and you don't get answers, then you're like, okay, so I don't think this Torah is so legit as it's presented. So many commentaries will throw out questions and you'll be like, oh, I never thought about that. And then present a solid answer that, in Hebrew we say, lisgor pinot, to close the corners. With that said, what is this question that many commentaries are asking? And like I told you, probably all the commentaries, is on what did Moshe Rabbeinu got punished? Now, in case you're not so fluent in the story, I'll give you a little bit of background. We're talking here about 38 years after they're in the desert already, going into already the end. And what happens is that Moshe is commanded by the Master of the universe to go and get water out of the rock. And I'll tell you the story more in length in a second. I rather first go and focus on the problem that we have, then we'll elaborate on the story. But the story is that Moshe Rabbeinu goes and hits the rock, water comes out. It wasn't exactly what Hashem told him to do, and for that he gets punished severely. What did Moshe Rabbeinu do? What is the big deal that Moshe Rabbeinu did that he has to be punished in such a way? So the answer that Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, now that will drag with it another question. But the reaction, the comment that Hashem tells Moshe, Yan asher lo hemantem bi la'akdisheni. Translation I will translate you the entire verse. It can be found in our Parasha, in the book of Bamidbar, chapter 20, verse 12. Since you did not have faith in me to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly to the land which I have given to them. That's a severe punishment. What did I do? That's what Moshe Rabbeinu gets punished. Now, what is the punishment? He doesn't go into the land of Israel. After leading the nation for 40 years in the best way possible, he doesn't go into the land of Israel. Now let me just present a few questions, then we can dive into it. First of all, the question that I told you before is, what's this big sin? What did Moshe Rabbeinu did? A few years before that, they make a golden calf, and Hashem forgives that. Moshe Rabbeinu hits a rock with a stick, and he gets punished in a severe way that he doesn't go into the land of Israel. Now, this didn't happen at the time of the spies, a year and a half, to be exact, a year and a quarter after leaving Mitzrayim. That's almost before going into the land of Israel. So I led the nation almost 40 years, and then a little mistake, and that's what I get punished? Question number one. Question number two, why is he getting punished? There was a miracle. Can you take water out of a rock? No. Nobody can take water out of a rock. So what's the matter? If he hit it, he spoke to it, he kicked it, there was a miracle. That's enough. Isn't this sufficient? I mean, what does it say? You did not have faith in me to sanctify me. That's a pretty good sanctification, that I was able to hit the rock and water came out. There was a miracle. That should be sufficient. Question number three. Let's say Moshe Rabbeinu made a boo-boo. He made a mistake. So what? And find a little bit of compassion, a little bit of mercy, a little bit of good merits that Moshe Rabbeinu did to forgive. He says, okay, that's something minor. Let's pretend it never happened. What's the big deal? So he made a mistake. Now, if you're connecting these questions that I'm saying to what I told you a few minutes ago, these questions can question the person's emunah. Well, Moshe Rabbeinu made a small mistake and he's getting punished. I make big mistakes. What is going to happen to me? Next, another big question that nobody seems to find the answer. When Moshe Rabbeinu got punished, you know what he says? In English, you don't pay attention because he says in English, since you did not. In Hebrew, yan lo he'emantem. He'emantem means plural. In English, you don't find the word plural here. It just says, you didn't have faith in me. In Hebrew, it says the word he'emantem, saying plural. Who's plural? Who got punished? Moshe and Aharon. What did Aaron do? He just stood there. So Moshe Rabbeinu is doing a mistake and Aaron gets punished? Next. Now comes a big question. When, and I'll tell you in a second the story, everything will come into the right sequence. But in the commandment, Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, take your staff and go to the rock. If you want Moshe Rabbeinu to talk to the rock, why are you commanding him to take a staff? I told you to talk. I didn't tell you to hit. If I didn't tell you to hit, why are you telling me to take my staff? That's kind of tricking him. The word in Hebrew is lehachshil, is to make a person fail. If I give you a knife, I'm taking into consideration the danger that you might do something with that knife in a moment of anger or whatever you want to call it. Why are you telling him to take a staff? Tell him, Moshe, no staffs, no sticks, no rods, just you. So we have here a bunch of questions that, like I told you, that if you didn't ask these questions, and don't be offended what I'm about to say, you didn't pay attention to what the text says, because you just went through the text No questions, okay, that's what the Torah says, which in one way, sometimes, not expanding your horizons is good. No questions, then you don't put yourself into any situations that you might not be happy with the answer. Sometimes, keeping it simple is good. But that's not our approach right now. I read the text, questions should come up. If you read these questions, or you come up with these questions, you're saying, what's going on here? Nothing seems to be working out. And now I'm going to give you the question of questions, that if this is the case, how come Moshe Rabbeinu, a few parashot forward in the Parasha of Devarim, when he makes a summary of what's going on in the desert, how come Moshe changes the version? Because what does it says in the Parashat Devarim? He doesn't say, I got punished not to go to Israel because of the water. He says, I got punished because of you with the spies not to come into Eretz Israel. Gambit anaf Hashem. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu says. Hashem was also angry with me because of you. So wait a minute. Moshe Rabbeinu is changing the version right now? If he really got punished not to go into the land of Israel because of hitting the rock and not fulfilling Hashem's commandment, and that was the punishment, then he should have said that in Parashat Devarim. I didn't come into Eretz Israel because I hit the rock. Why are you now switching the version and you're saying, no, I was punished not to come into Israel because of what you did with the spies? So Moshe is covering up the evidence. Okay. Now that we presented a few interesting questions, let's now see what the parasha is trying to tell me. So first of all, a little bit of background of what's going on. We're talking here, you have to understand that Parashat Chukat is 38 years into the desert. This is called I don't know how you would translate it in English. In Hebrew it will call Parashat HaMa'avar. The parasha of like jumping from the beginning of the desert to the end of the desert. Okay? First comes another big question. What happened in the middle? What happened 38 years? We stopped last week with Korach and the Meraglim, right? Well, Meraglim, the spies, a week before that. But we stopped at the event of Korach and the spies, which is about a year and a quarter after going into the desert. And whoop, we fast forward 38 years. What happened then? What were they doing for 38 years? That in itself is very curious. Give me some what they did there. But nevertheless, Parashat Chukat, we're fast forwarding 38 years. Now, like I told you, in the middle we don't really know what happened. I mean, we know more or less, but there's not much information what was going on there. Now happens an event on the 10th of Nisan, which is the going into the 40th year in the desert, the last year. Miriam dies. And needless to say, what a great mourning. The whole nation is upset, the mother of the nation. And needless to say, that's a big event to the entire nation. And not to get into too many details, but to explain the situation, is Miriam was an image. First of all, you have to understand, she was the sister of Aaron and Moshe. She was like from the elite of the elite. She was like one of the leaders. Needless to say that with the history that she came, in her merit, really there's a nation. Because Paro wanted to kill everybody. Not only that she was one of the ones who were saving the babies, when Amram, the father of Moshe, divorced his wife, because he didn't want to bring children to the world, she went to him and told him, you are worse than Paro. Now you're stopping all the birth from coming. So she has merits, unbelievable merits for the entire nation was looking up at her. And suddenly she dies. Now, not to get stuck on too much historical details, one reaction after her death was no more water. There were 3 miracles in the desert. There were many, but 3 miracles that happened in the merit of Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. In the merit of Moshe, we received the man. Why Dafka in the merit of Moshe? Because Moshe was the one who brought the Torah. That's considered feeding. So the feeding of the Torah equals to the feeding of food. So in the merit of Moshe, they received the man the food every day. In the merit of Aaron HaKohen, they had the Ananei HaKavod, these clouds that surrounded them, that straightened the land when they were walking. Can you imagine you're walking and something is like sweeping the floor in front of you? The clouds washed their clothes. The clouds did everything to them. And that was what was in the merit of Aaron. Aaron was the Kohen, the one who's gathering everybody together and bringing everybody in peace. And these clouds surrounded everybody as one unit. And in the merit of Miriam, we had the well of Miriam. Now, of course, we can make a whole class just on the merit of Miriam. Why? The well and the water. But she was called the mother of the nation. So the same way that the mother nourishes the kid, so she was the one who nourished the nation with water. Water is nourishing, and without water you can't survive. And needless to say that some point, and again, like I told you, maybe another time we'll do a class about Miriam, but there are many great things that because of the merit of Miriam happened, and most people don't even focus on that. We focus on the fact that there was a well of Miriam and there was water for the nation. But you know what most people forget? The water of Miriam also was the one who made a mikveh. How would they have a mikveh? They needed mikveh water. That was also in the merit of Miriam. And many other great things. Now, what happens really in the order of events? Miriam dies, Moshe and Aaron, they go to sit Shiva, they go into the tent to sit Shiva. Not even an hour passes, and they hear a commotion outside. What's going on? Let me mourn quietly. Let me sit now and be an avel. They peek from the tent. What's going on there? A mob of people screaming, no water, the well is not working. They shut down the water. 1 hour! Give it a day or two. 1 hour, they're all starting to make a commotion. And needless to say, and this is almost 40 years after going out of Mitzrayim, it's a new generation. It's not the generation that came out of the Mitzrayim. Not even an hour without water supply. Oh, we shouldn't have gone out of Mitzrayim. 40 years you're taking us in the desert. For what? And all starting to not even 1 ounce of being grateful and thankful. Okay, the whole nation is complaining that there's no water shortage. And Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, what do you want me to do now with this mob of people? What can I do? So Hashem says, okay, no problem. Take your staff, go out, you and Aaron, go to the rock and get water and let them drink. Okay. Moshe Rabbeinu goes out with Aaron, they both go, they gather everybody and they come and say, okay, follow us, we're going to find the rock. And the thing is, in the beginning, Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't find the rock because it kind of camouflaged itself in all the other rocks. And you know, when you're saying the well of Miriam, you're imagining a whale. It's not a whale, it was a rock. Anyways, the rock kind of camouflaged itself in the other rock and Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't find it. So now they're all saying, oh, great, look at this, you can't even find the rock. And then, of course, he doesn't find the right rock, so he talks to one rock, nothing happens. And they all come and scream at Moshe Rabbeinu, look what you did, you took us out of Mitzrayim, you can't even lead us, etc. They're all starting to gather against him. And then comes the moment that Moshe Rabbeinu, as we say in our simple language, loses it, or to say it more clearly, freaks out, and he screams at them for the first time after 40 years. Sh'imuna amorim. Listen to me, you rebels. Or saying in other words, shut up already. Let me try to figure it out now. Screaming in the background. Now can you imagine Moshe Rabbeinu loses it for a second? Okay, after he gets upset, he tells them that they're rebels. Probably from the anger, I don't know what, we don't really have the right information. Maybe he was angry, maybe he was frustrated, whatever. He hits the rock and sure, lo and behold, water starts coming out. And everybody's happy, but Hashem is not happy. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, I didn't tell you to hit the rock, I told you to talk to the rock. Since you did not sanctify my name by speaking to the rock, therefore you and Aaron are punished and you're not going to go into the land of Israel. And we're talking here about moments before they're going into the land. Now comes, of course, the question that we asked before that should be asked by any reader What's the big deal? So Moshe Rabbeinu got a little bit impatient. So, oh what? You don't get upset ever? And okay, so he was a little bit impatient. And he called them rebels. And he hit the rock. What's the big deal? Smooth it out. Make everybody happy. Here's your water. Go home. What's going on here? Now again, I'm saying it now in a very short way because we already went through all the questions and all the different options. The question that we're stuck here is, what is the big deal, right? Now if we take this question plus all the other questions that we asked before, and we cannot come with normal answers, because really what's the big deal? And why did Aaron get punished? And there was a miracle, water came out, and all these questions. If this is the situation, must be there's something much bigger is hidden in this whole event than some basic act that Moshe Rabbeinu hit a stone. So just to conclude, first of all, the three major questions, and on that I'm going to top another question. First of all, the first question is, how come the rest of the world gets mercy and Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't? Okay? Did the golden calf? They were forgiven. Many other events that happened, they were forgiven. So everybody can have mercy from Hashem, just Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't get any mercy, any credit points. Next question, how is Aaron involved? That's one of the questions that I was like, what did he do? You know, the Midrash says an interesting situation. I mean, I'll tell you it in a modern day example. The Midrash talks about it a little bit different. The modern day example, the question that the Midrash asks is, I took a loan from the bank. Okay, a person took a loan from the bank. The person didn't pay the loan. The bank comes and takes his house and the neighbor's house. What did the neighbor do? He didn't pay the loan. Now the Midrash says that example a little bit different. It doesn't say mortgage and a loan and the bank. But that's how the Midrash is saying. He didn't pay the debt. The bank is coming and taking the neighbor's house. And the third question is, like I told you before, is why is Hashem even giving him the staff? You know that something's going to happen. Don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind man. Don't give him the staff. Tell Moshe, no staffs. Just you. Okay. And like I told you, I added another fourth question on top of all of that, is why is Moshe Rabbeinu changing the history in Parashat Dvarim. In Parashat Dvarim, he should have said, I was punished not to go into the land of Israel because I hit the rock. Instead of that, he's saying, because of you, Hashem got upset at me and I didn't go into the land of Israel. Now, interestingly, just on that question, the Or HaChaim says something very interesting. If we're ready, that's the question we're presenting. Why did Moshe change the version? And Moshe Rabbeinu says in Parashat Dvarim that because of you, Hashem was angry with me. The Or HaChaim says, we can't find anywhere in the text that Hashem got angry with Moshe Rabbeinu at the Meraglim. Can you find the text? It says something like that? Or HaChaim says, why is Moshe Rabbeinu says, because of you, Hashem got upset with me. No such text. No such proof that Hashem said, that Hashem got upset with Moshe. That's already starting to raise a lot of questions. Now, on all these questions that I just told you, like I told you, some questions in the Torah, one commentary will ask. Another event in the Torah, two commentaries will ask. In this, everybody asked. The Or HaChaim gave 10 explanations about what's going on there around the rock and the water. More than that, there's another commentary, not so known. His acronym is Shadal, Shmuel David Lutzato, gives 13 explanations what's going on around the rock and the water. And then he dares to say, I actually have another explanation, but I'm going to hold myself from saying that because I don't want to chas v'shalom show that Moshe Rabbeinu did a sin. But I have another explanation and I'm not going to tell you that. Not me. Shmuel David Lutzato says that. I have another, but I'm not going to say that. And on that, of course, comes all the commentaries that you know. Rashi says that he fisfes Kiddush Hashem. פספוס של קידוש Hashem. He missed the Kiddush Hashem. And when Rashi's question, but there was a Kiddush Hashem, you know what it is to take water out of the rock? So Rashi says, hitting the rock is a small Kiddush Hashem, talking to the rock is a big Kiddush Hashem. There's a big difference between the small Kiddush Hashem and the big Kiddush Hashem. He missed the opportunity. Rambam says something very, very extreme, and that's he's kind of answering the question is how is Aaron involved here. Rambam says, Aaron and Moshe said, Mehasela hazeh notzi mayim. Now again, you can't learn the Torah in English because it's not going to sound plural. In Hebrew, it says, from this rock we will take out water. Rambam says they failed by saying, we will take out the water. Hashem will take out the water. So Rambam is very extreme by saying that their sin here is that they took the credit. We will take out the water. And that's how already Rambam is already putting Aaron part of the sin here. When we ask him, what is Aaron doing? He just stood there. Okay. Now again, now is not the time to go through all the commentaries. If you have the time, go and read different commentaries and you'll see that nobody really has a good answer. What was going on here? He did this, he did that. There's one interesting commentary by Rashi, but not on the Torah, in a completely different place. In Tractate Sanhedrin, it says that the stargazers of Moshe Rabbeinu the stargazers of Paro, the stargazers of Paro told Paro that Moshe Rabbeinu is going to, his fall, he's going to be on the water. His fall, his, collapse, his failure. So many thought it's going to be when he was on the water in the basket. Then maybe when he split the sea. But later on they understood that what was his failure in the water, in the situation with the water coming out of the rock. So in Tractate Sanhedrin it says that the stargazers, maybe I'm translating stargazers wrong, the atstignonim, the ones who were looking in the stars and the magicians or whatever, the fortune cookies, the fortune tellers. So they said Moshe Rabbeinu loke b'mayim. He's going to get hit in the water. On that, there's a commentary from Rashi that Rashi says that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was punished for. What does it mean, loke al hamayim? When he says shimuna hamorim, when he says listen to me, you rebels. That he swore, how do you say swore? But using, like when you use a false word, you call somebody a not nice word. What is it called? Swearing. That he, in Hebrew, is a gadef. So Rashi says there, gidef et Israel. He swear the nation. You, the leader, calling them rebels? That's not appropriate. Am I using the right word? Swearing at somebody, right? I don't know, not swear to give an oath. To when you curse somebody, lekalel, to swear, legadef. Swore. That's the word, swore? Okay, so not swear. He wasn't like taking an oath. He was like swearing them. It's the same word. Same word? Okay, but you understand, the Rashi says, this is not appropriate for the leader to use such a word. It's almost like, excuse my language, I'll call somebody, you stupid. Now, if two kids saying it to each other, fine. Can you imagine you're sitting in a big lecture and the rabbi, the chief rabbi calls you fool, you didn't understand. I mean, fools are not such a bad name. I don't want to say not nice words. But can you imagine some great rabbi suddenly telling you some word like, what? So Rashi, and again, just to summarize it, Rashi says in Tractate Sanhedrin that when the stargazers of Paro told that Moshe Rabbeinu is going to get hit, going to be cursed, it loses power on the water, it goes on the event, not on the splitting of the sea, and not when he was in the water in the basket. That's going to be his fall, the event with the water. Why? Because he swore against, he used a not nice word against the nation. Wow. So Rashi kind of narrows down by saying that was your downfall. I understand you lost it, but don't use foul language. Don't how would you say, belittle yourself?
Taint yourself.
How?
Taint.
Don't taint yourself because of them. I mean, it's not appropriate. You are Moshe Rabbeinu. Just say, leave me alone, or be quiet, or pay some patience. Now, I'm not judging Moshe Rabbeinu. I would lose it on the nation within 3 seconds. I don't know about you. I would not carry Moshe Rabbeinu's job more than 3 minutes. I would lose it in a second. And probably most people too. To carry 40 years and zipping your mouth. So I'm not judging Moshe Rabbeinu at all. But let's say Moshe Rabbeinu lost it, a moment of weakness. He called them rebels. So what? That's so severe that you're taking his merit to go into the land of Israel? What's the big deal? Why are you making a big deal out of it? The Ramban says something very interesting. I don't understand or agree with this approach. So he called them rebels. Moshe Rabbeinu is a prophet. You know what's the job of a prophet? To rebuke. He did his job. So what? So he used the word rebels. He didn't call them other things that I don't want to say. What's the big deal? That's the Ramban comes to the side of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's his job. His job is to be upset at them when it's time to be upset. His job is to tell them, shut up! I had enough of you for 40 years. And again, I'm not justifying or going against. I'm just telling you what smarter people than us said. So the Rambam says, so what? That's his job. He's a prophet. The definition of a prophet is to prove the nation. The reason why nobody liked the prophets, because the prophets don't come and tell you, oh, you're doing great. The prophets are coming and telling you, you're sinning, you're slandering, you're full of hate, you're full of jealousy, get your act together. Nobody liked the prophets. If they had Facebook at the time, they wouldn't have much followers. Same thing with Moshe. Rambam says, what do you want from him? He's a prophet. He came to tell them, you are rebels. Get your act together. Look at yourself. You're coming and complaining to me. Look at yourself before you come and complaining to me. On that comes the Ibn Ezra and adds another interesting commentary and says about these 3 words, Shimu na hamorim, listen to me, rebels. He adds on that a few words, and he says, Vehem bnei Avraham, Yitzchak veYaakov. These rebels that you're talking about, they are the children of Avraham, Yitzchak veYaakov. Be very careful how you talk. Don't express your frustration so easy. What do we take from this? Something very, very powerful, that in itself should be sufficient for this to conclude this clash, which we're not, is that words create a reality. Whatever you say, be very careful, because you will create a reality. Now, that will work in a very good way on the positive side, but when you tell your son or your daughter you're a failure, you're lazy, you're a bum, or you tell your worker you're always late, I don't even know why I hired you, or you tell your spouse you never clean up, you're lazy, take the consideration that what you say will create a reality. If you would tell your child all his life, you are a winner, you can do it, you're successful, you're smart, he'll become a winner and successful and smart because you empower this in him. And vice versa, of course. When the Baal Shem Tov was asked, what's so severe with Lashon Hara? I didn't kill anybody, I didn't steal your wealth, I didn't do horrible things, so I said a few things, it's the truth. So he says the problem with Lashon Hara is that whatever you say, you empower that in that person. So if I say something about you, good or bad, positive or negative, true or false, I empower it in you. Now one can say, but if I say, oh, he's so successful, he's so smart, there's no empowering it in you. Why would that be wrong? That is not the time now to explain the approach of the Baal Shem Tov, but the point that we want to take from that is that words create a reality, and when Moshe Rabbeinu calls them rebels, then Moshe Rabbeinu puts in them this power of being rebellious. Now, I told you already that how you talk to other people will determine a lot of their behavior, because a person will kind of decide what to be based on the expectations of his surrounding. I'll say it again slower. Most people will determine how to conduct, behave, and be based on the expectations of their surrounding. So if I will tell a person, you are a thief, you are a crook, you are a liar, then he says, okay, that's what my father thinks of me, so let me at least be a good thief. Right? That's what Acher said. We talked about him last class. He says, if the gates of heavens closed, and I don't have Olam Haba, so let me enjoy this Olam. Let me go all the way. I'm stuck in this world. I'm here for 60, 70, 80 years. I'll do the best. So if you tell your child you are a thief, you are a failure, okay, so let me be a good failure. If you're thinking I'm a failure. So, and again, this is not 100%, and don't get locked on everything that I say. But the reality is that most people will kind of set themselves based on what society is expecting from them. Now the Torah comes and tells you something very powerful. That an educator, whether it's a rabbi to his students, a father to his child, it doesn't matter. We're all educators, by the way. Even if you're not a rabbi, and even if you're way past educating your kids, and because any person around you, you can educate them to many different things. But the Torah calls it an educator, a mechanech. That the main job of this educator is to teach the child what he doesn't know about himself. That's the point of the educator. I don't need to come and teach you what you know about yourself. I need to come and teach you what you don't know about yourself. Yourself, not the world and the Torah. And by that, I'm turning the person on. Now, if I'm in a position of a teacher, that's one thing. If I'm in a position of a father, or well, not a mother, but some of you are, then I have to come to my child and teach my child, besides basic things. I'm not talking now, you have to focus on what I'm trying to say. Not to teach, of course I have to teach my child Torah and manners. I'm talking about when I come to teach my child something, I need to teach him what he doesn't know about himself. You can do it. You are very talented. You're very successful. You're very strong. You're very determined. Now that can be done in any type of situation. And by that, I'm able to inspire the person, turn the person on. Now, if one might say, I don't have children, or I have, but they're much older, I'm not a teacher, I'm not an educator, I'm not a rabbi, so how is that relating to me? Well, you know, we have a huge obligation that when we see a person that is not so connected to the Creator, I have to educate them about the Torah. And if you're not doing that, then you're missing a big part of your life. Each and every one of us has at least one person that they can inspire about the Torah and mitzvot and the unity of Hashem. And you can call it outreach, call it however you want to call it. Zikuy Rabim. The fact is that each and every one of us has this obligation. It's not a zchut, it's an obligation. So if I set my mind, let's say now a person says, that's it, I'm already in my 50s, 60s, my kids are already older, I'm done with that. I'm not an educator, I need to educate somebody, I need to be a giver. I need to give over something that I have. We spoke about it 3 classes ago. If you remember in Tomer Dvorah, about the sphere of Chokhmah, that if I receive something, it's right away to give it over. So any person can take this approach and to understand that when I give something over to somebody is to empower something in them that they didn't know. And this, I don't know if we have time to talk about it right now in this class, but we all have the obligation to reaching out to another person that is not in the same level of observance of me, or maybe doesn't even believe that there's a creator. So you're all educators. Everybody's an educator. And if you know something about the truth of what's going on in the last 2 years, suddenly all the world became educators because suddenly something shifted in the world. So if you know something about the truth of a certain matter, you have the obligation to go and educate somebody and to teach them. Now, how would you do it? Now, let's say, just for the sake of the example, I know the fact of the matter and I came to the conclusion after research of months and months and months that the lie that they're telling people that the vaccine is good for you, and I figured it out that it's not good. Should I just zip my mouth? That's the question that I got thousands of questions, the same question from thousands of people. Should I know the truth. Should I shut my mouth or should I go and tell people and warn them and educate them? And you know how many thousands of this question I got in the last 2 years? I figured out the truth. Not me. That's the question. Should I tell my parents? Should I tell my boss? Should I do this? Should I shut my mouth because I'm going to be attacked, ridiculed, mocked, and whatever? Or should I? Of course, you know something, you know the truth, you go and educate another person. How do you do it? Then you have to know how to do it. And again, we were talking about educating somebody in the existence of the Torah and the existence of the Creator. I'm now taking it to a different place. And the reason I'm saying that, because some people might say, I'm not an educator. Everybody's an educator. You sat in a class right now. You go home. You have to give it over to somebody. You take something out of the class. From my experience, from the hour and a half class that you sit here, most people take 1 or 2%. They don't remember all the details. They don't remember all the stories. Something sticks from an hour and a half class. A story, a twist, a commentary. Very few people can take the entire hour and a half and repeat it. That takes a very, very developed mind to be able to listen an hour and a half and record in the brain the entire class. It's almost impossible. Smart people, they re-watch the class over and over. But most people, they take one thing. I told you 1,000,000 times, our sages say, Gadol ha-Talmud hamavi lidei maaseh. When is the Talmud, when you're learning, is the greatest, is when you can transform it into action. Our sages say that there's different levels when you learn. One of the highest is lilmod al menat lelamed, to learn in order to teach. If you're learning lilmod al menat lasot, that's very good. To learn in order to do. Okay, that's the basics. Next step, lilmod al menat lelamed, lasot velelamed, to do and to also teach. But the point is that we're all educators one way or another. And I'm giving you one example. I gave you one example with parenthood, or one example now with the vaccines. It can be 1,000,001 things. You know something, you are convinced that you are right, then of course you have to educate somebody else. And that can be in many different things. And not to get stuck on that, let's continue. But the point is that Hashem says the leadership stops when the educator makes the student lower. That's where Moshe Rabbeinu signed his destiny. Now, say it again. The Master of the Universe told Moshe Rabbeinu, the leadership stops the moment that you, the educator, the leader, makes the student lower. That's it. You're not worthy to be a leader anymore. I'm sorry to tell you, you finished your term. You are the teacher. You need to know when to control yourself. If you can't control yourself, then you can't be in this job. And that's, by the way, not that neither one of us is Moshe Rabbeinu, but if I'm now looking at myself as a father and I'm educating my kids, the second that I made my kid lower than what he is, or I came and I think the right word, I don't think the right word would be to degrade the person, but to make him smaller than what he is, instead of elevating him, that's it. You failed in this moment. Now, nobody's going to come and give you firing you from being a father. And then you have another chance and another chance. But in a situation of Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem says, I'm sorry to tell you. You call them rebels, instead of calling them great nation, you are great followers, you are unbelievable. You made them lower, that's it. And what should one take from all of this is that each and every one of us is hidden inside of us treasures that are unbelievable. If you don't know your treasures yet, then it's a big problem in your path of spiritual growth. And it doesn't matter if you're 20 or 50 or 90. You need to figure out very fast what is the treasure in you. One is an amazing artist, another one is an amazing singer, another one is an amazing educator, another one is an inventor. Doesn't matter what it is. Everybody has something that is amazing in them, and many people have many treasures in them, including all of you. I'll tell you what's the problem. That you can't reveal it. Somebody has to reveal it for you. You can find your own treasure. You need to find the person that will reveal in you the treasure. So some will call it a rabbi, a mashpia, a sponsor, or there's many different words to that. Now, if once you found those treasures, go ahead. No, you don't have to fire a rabbi. I'm just saying, each and every one of us has unbelievable powers. I call it now treasures, because that's how the Midrash says, that we have a lot of treasures inside. Person can feel or think that they're rude, and really they have unbelievable compassion inside. It was just never exposed because society was telling them, you are rude, you are short-tempered, you're not nice to other people. And maybe that's the situation the world took in there. And all it takes is a person to come and says, wow, I've never seen such compassion in a person. Really? I'm compassionate? I'm compassionate? Wow, I didn't know that. So imagine how you would feel when somebody will come and point out these amazing things in you. Suddenly you blossom. You're like, wow. I had a certain individual like that when I was a teenager. That just knew how to point out these things. He was like my role model. He was my hero. Because he had the ability to know how to look beyond my I don't even know how to translate it. All the bad things that I did. I wasn't a good student. I wasn't a good child. I wasn't a good anything. In many things. I was very rebellious. But he knew how to look, to see above it, and to point out the good things. You know how it made me feel? Oh, I can actually, I am good. I can do something good. I have something in me. So a good educator knows how to find the good in the other person and to reveal it to them. Now, let's talk in the level of a parent. You can tell your parent you're lazy, you don't do your homework, your room is always a mess, look at your clothes, I buy you clothes, you throw them on the floor, you never help around the house. So that's what's going to be drilled into the child. You choose what words you want to use. If you focus on the bad, then you empower the bad. That's where you're taking the person. That's what's going to happen. You're not revealing any good things. You're just telling them what they already know that they are. If I'm lazy, I know I'm lazy. By the way, if I'm a little bit of a slob, I know that I'm a slob. You don't have to tell me that. I know that I throw the clothes on the floor. I need you to come and tell me that I'm patient, compassionate, successful, wise, interesting, and so forth. That's why an educator, and I'm using the word educator because all of us are educators, whether you are a parent, you are a rabbi, a teacher, in the street, you want to educate somebody about what's going on in the world. A good educator is measured when you see the good and not see the bad. I can see the bad in everybody, by the way, including myself. And you too. We're very judgmental creatures. We can see very, very quickly the bad in every person. Now elevate yourself and let's see how you can see the good in another person, and then also to deliver it in a way that the person that might not be aware of that still be inspired and be elevated. So, just to conclude this, because this will answer the first question, we still have the other questions, is that when I want to be the type of person that will push another individual to success, I want to do that because I have kids. I don't have some conspiracy that I want my kids to be failures. I don't know a parent that says, I want my kid to fail. I want them to be miserable. And why? Because it will make me look better. Maybe there's some crazy people that think like that. Normal parents, they want their kids to be successful. So now look at it from the vision of a parent, but you can take it to any type of angle. Is that when I want to be the one that will be the cause for the success of another, then I have to focus on a few things. And I told you I don't want to sidetrack in regards to Miriam, but Miriam, why did she get so much merit? Because Miriam had the power to see how much will come out from one person when saving Moshe Rabbeinu. She could have said, why risk the entire nation now? Let this baby die. She saw forward what can come out from one person. So every person in their life, and I hope I can say every person, has somebody that along their life came and said something, did an action and made a shift in their life, and you can attribute, oh, my success is because that person. Oh, that person said something 20 years ago and revived me. Don't you want to be that person that after 40 years somebody will say, you saved my life. You gave me one word of advice, changed my entire outlook of the world, and now I'm here. You want to strive to be, at least for one person. And not for the sake of the credit and fame or your ego, is you want to be this educator, this, I like calling it a billboard. Because usually billboards are there, you don't pay much attention, but subconsciously what the billboard is telling you, you get it all. That's why they put billboards everywhere. You want to be a billboard. You want to be the person that somebody will come and tell you, or your children, or your grandchildren, you know, your great-grandfather once told me one thing, that's it. Changed my entire life. And of course, you want to be the one who does it to many. To your kids, to your grandkids, to your neighbors, to your students, to your friends. And if this is the case, then you have to focus on three things. A, that you have to create all the time around you a positive conversation. Most people, they speak about very negative things. All their conversation is negative. He did this, she did that, he did this, the government did this, he did that, and well, enough. You have to constantly create positive conversation. The conversation is not positive, either leave or change the subject. And when I'm talking about positive, is showing a lot of gratitude, pushing to success. Somebody once told me a long time ago, you know, you want to educate your kids the best, thank your wife. Your wife puts food on the table, thank you for the wonderful dinner. She washed your clothes, thank you, my dear, for washing my clothes. That not for being grateful to your wife, to educate the kids. That they see the father and mother are thanking each other. Why? Because it inspires and drives a person to a very good atmosphere, to good thoughts, instead of saying, now you're bringing it to me. I asked you 2 hours ago to bring. Instead of that, oh, thank you for bringing it to me. I know it's very hard to hold your tongue by saying, but you were 2 hours late. Don't say you were 2 hours late. Now you remember. Thank you for remembering. As how you choose your words will make a huge difference. Next thing you need to focus on is to build the power of greatness. Is this term what's called, I can do it. Most people are failures because it was already drilled in their mind, you can't do it. You're not going to be able to. You're not going to be successful. Don't even try. When you have somebody in the back of your mind telling you, you can do it, then you will do it. And you want to tell that to your kids, you want to tell that to random people, you want to tell it to your students, you want to tell it to any person. You can do it. No, I believe in you. I believe you can do it. And the person that I told you was very inspiring in my life, I was 15, 16, he was able to not only tell me you can do it, he was so smart that he knew how to make me do it and see, I told you can do it. And I was like, wow. My teachers always told me I'm a failure. My parents told me I'm a failure. I mean, everybody told me I'm a failure. My teacher told me you're going to be collecting garbage in the people who collect garbage in the morning. And, you know, I didn't have good educators when I was a kid. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm a loser. I'm not good for nothing. I might as well enjoy my life. And if I'm bad, then at least let me be bad. So you need to know how to bring this power in a person that you can do it. And then again, it can be also to your spouse. And it can be to your brother. And it can be to your sister. That you just sit and give advice. And needless to say that you have to celebrate accomplishments. So with kids, they bring a good report card, you buy them an ice cream, a person does something good, you reward them for that. And I know it sounds childish, but no, when a person celebrates success, it gives the motivation and the inspiration to be more successful. And everybody wants to be, what's the word? It's on the tip of my tongue now. Everybody wants to be not recognized, but to be appreciated. There's another word for that. You do something, you want sometimes, all it takes is to be acknowledged. To be acknowledged. Thank you. You do something good to somebody. You're not expecting a thank you. You're not expecting, but a little bit of acknowledgement and hakarat tov and some satisfaction, some showing appreciation. That's what I need. That's what I want.
Mommy, look! I slid down the slide.
Yeah.
Mommy, look! I built a tower.
Exactly, and everybody wants that. So again, and I'm just trying to do it quick so we can summarize this part and continue. But this isn't enough; it's sufficient. And one of the major messages when we're asking, what's the big deal? I mean, the question that we're asking with Moshe, what's the big deal? So he hit a rock. For Hashem, it's a big deal. Because you're the leader. You're the one who has to give now example. And the second that you mess up, they need to see that you can mess up. You need to know you can mess up. We need to understand that even a leader can mess up and be punished by the master of the universe. So this is answering, like I told you, what's so severe that Moshe did? Then Hashem said, I have to make a big deal out of it. Sometimes you have to make a big deal out of something. But we have to understand that this water of dispute, that wasn't the problem. Already, like Moshe Rabbeinu said, at the time of the spies, that's really when Moshe Rabbeinu was already, it was decided that he's not going into Eretz Israel. That already is answering the question why he changed the version. He didn't change the version. The truth is that Moshe, the decree that Moshe is not going into the land of Israel happened with the spies. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu didn't change it. I'll explain to you in a second why he didn't go. But the Midrash says something very interesting, that, like I told you, that there was a conspiracy. The Midrash says, Nora alila al bnei Adam. There was a conspiracy, so to say, against Moshe Rabbeinu. And the answer, the Midrash says, is that he didn't want Moshe Rabbeinu to go down in history with a big sin. That he should go down in history with something minor. Okay, hitting the rock. Then we can say, okay, it wasn't such a big deal. And why? That, again, if Chas v'Shalom Moshe Rabbeinu will go down in history for something big, then that will be like detrimental. Oh my God, our great leaders failed in something big. That way it's in the back of our mind. Okay, so he hit the rock. He had to be rebuked. Fine, we accept it, and we don't have in our mind that Chas v'Shalom Moshe Rabbeinu did something bad. Now, why is all this? Now, first we also have to understand that the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu didn't go into the land of Israel. Okay? The generation we're talking here now, the rebels, they are the ones who went into Israel. The generation of the spies, they didn't go into the land of Israel. So when we're asking why was so severe the punishment that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't go into the land of Israel, okay, so he did something so small. Give him a little punishment. Master of the universe told Moshe Rabbeinu, you are the head of that generation. The head cannot go without the body, and the body cannot be without the head. You were the head of the generation of the midbar, of the desert. Then you have to stay with them. And you know why? Because you're going to be the one who's going to resurrect them in the desert. They all died without burials, no graves. There's no graves in the desert. You led them out of Mitzrayim. You're their leader. Then you stay with them. The water of dispute, that's a cover-up. That's just a scene to cover up the situation. But the reality is that Moshe Rabbeinu, that's why when we ask him, what's the big deal? It wasn't a big deal. It had to be some type of a cover-up. But on a personal note, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm sorry, you are their head. The head cannot go without the body. You have to stay in the desert. Now, some commentaries will say that the generation of the desert lost their Olam Haba, their world to come. But we still know that Moshe Rabbeinu is buried in the desert with them. Why? So he can resurrect them and get them out. On that comes a very interesting question that this will shed the light of really what we want to take from this entire thing. is that if you go to the last tractate in the Talmud, the tractate that concludes everything is in the tractate Nida. Nida, the term Nida is when a woman has her cycle, then if she doesn't go to the mikveh, she's considered Nida. And not the most smart way to use the word, she's impure or something, because then the woman is, I'm impure, you're calling me impure. The state is called Nida. So there's a very interesting question towards the end of the tractate that it ends with a very interesting story about a certain group of people that are called Anshe Alexandria, that they came with some weird questions to Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania. Okay, and they asked him 12 questions. That's the story, how it ends. And these people were like real like lowlifes, these Anshe Alexandria. These were people that were very rebellious and very going against the master of the universe and heretics. They went down to Egypt and they built a Bet HaMikdash in Egypt that was bigger, fancier, and nicer and so forth. Like a competition to Bet HaMikdash. Can you imagine? And it says that this Bet HaMikdash was first of all beautiful, but it was so big that if somebody would stand on one side and scream, on the other side you wouldn't hear it. That's how big it was. The Mikdash was called Chonio. But they built like not a replica, but something to compete with Beit HaMikdash. They were very not nice people, and constantly like, it's kind of like in our generation, the ones who know about the Torah, but they come and ask you these distorting, tricky question to discount the Torah and to confuse the person. Most people are not very smart when it comes to the Torah, including me. There are very few wise people that can shoot answers and can zip somebody's mouth, as our sages say, "Dam atashiv lapikoros." How many people come and ask you a question and you're like, I don't know. I told you already that many, many years ago, let me sidetrack for a second to tell you a story, that many, many years ago, my wife's best friend, she used to come to us for Shabbat, and we were trying to, inspire her to observe Shabbat and etc. and become modest, eating kosher. And my wife and me were newlyweds. Anyways, one time she comes and tells us, I have neighbors and they're so nice, and they're like you. He has a beard and she covers her hair, and they came and offered, they saw that I have a mezuzah. They told me that they're also Jewish, but they don't speak so much like you. They speak a lot about Jesus. And I'm like, so they're not Jewish if that's the case. No, they're Jewish. He looks like you, has a beard and the yarmulke. And I says, okay, so maybe they're missionaries. I don't know what they are. No, they observe Shabbat. And I said, okay, so if they observe Shabbat, why don't you invite them to a Shabbat meal? Let's see who your neighbors are. Needless to say that I didn't know what pit I'm digging to myself. And they accepted the invitation. Okay. Lo and behold, I now facing a situation that I have two missionaries, Christian missionaries, pretending to be Jews, coming to my Shabbat table. And I don't know how to deal with these two. So I started asking around, what should I do? Who should I consult with? After a few phone calls, somebody directed me to a certain rabbi in Los Angeles. Maybe some of you know him, Rabbi Kravitz, who's known to be like a very, very knowledgeable, very experienced when it comes to things like this. And I contact him and I tell him, I'm sorry I'm bothering you a few hours before Shabbat, but in about 3 hours I'm going to have two missionaries in my Shabbat table and I don't know what to do. And so he starts telling me, do this, do that, don't say this, don't say that. And then he tells me, whatever you do, don't get into any arguments with them about the Tanakh, because they're going to eat you alive and they're going to make you look like a fool. Don't get into arguments with them. They throw to you some verse from Isaiah 42, you move it to something else. Your aim is to show your friend that you are the truth, not to argue with these missionaries. To make a long story short, I come home from the Bet Knesset, sitting a couple. He looks totally religious. Beard, yarmulke, tzitzit, the whole thing. She looks like completely an observant Jewish woman. Okay, we start talking, then we start singing Shalom Aleichem. So I sing Shalom Aleichem, Melech Malchei Melachim. He says Melech Malchei Meshichim. Everything that I say, he has a little distorted word. He does the Netilat Yadayim, the Kiddush, the whole thing. Okay. Anyways, to make a very long story short, I think one of my classes I actually shared the entire story. To make a very long story short, I was trying to keep it nice. My goal, I'm here not to argue with him. I'm here to save my wife's friend and to show her that we are the emet. And I was talking. At some point, he was like, "Okay, you spoke enough. Now I want to talk." And he started talking and started sharing all his nonsense. And I was, should I jump into an argument? It's not true. It's not correct. If I can now correct him, we'll start an argument. So I'm holding my tongue and holding my tongue. And at some point, just goes to show you how powerful it is to hold your tongue. At some point, I kept saying "your guy." Okay? So he said something, and I was like, "Well, your guy says," and at some point, he flipped out. "Say his name!" And I was like, "No, I'm not going to say his name." He flipped out, cursing, yelling, and he's now coming with all his junk coming out of his mouth. I sat quietly, and we won the battle, because at the end, they left angry. And my wife's friend was like, "Okay, I see now what's the real deal and what's not the real deal." I'm telling you the story of a very short version of the story. Their deception, their precision was so unbelievable. But why am I telling you all this? The knowledge. He would corner me in a second. Now I'm going back 20 years. Maybe now he will still corner me, by the way. Because you have to be so knowledgeable to know how to answer every little corner, to be able to not only shut him up, to discredit him. Very few people can do that, by the way. And why am I saying that? Because even great rabbis, great scholars, they don't always have good answers. They might be very learned. But to deal with something in a debate, somebody in a debate, you have to be very, very knowledgeable. And why am I saying that? Because these Anshe Alexandria, I'm sorry, I'm ping-pong backwards and forth, my story, this, they were very, they knew the Torah inside out. They were vicious. And why am I saying that? Because in our generation, there are also people who know the Torah very well. Now, what's going to happen is they come to people, they make you look like a fool, because they come up with all the great answers. They know how to quote verses and to tell stories. I guarantee to you that the majority of observant Jews don't know the stories of the Tanakh that well or at all. Go now to an average, and it's chas v'shalom, not to put anybody down. Go now to an average observant Jew and ask him stories in the Tanakh. I don't know. Did you read Amos lately? Well, who's Amos? Well, he's one of the prophets. Did you read Chavakuk? Can you tell me about a story about... And again, it's not chas v'shalom to put anybody down, but people are busy. They don't really go into all the text, all the... And why am I saying that? So these Bnei Alexandria were like... They came with all these annoying questions. Why? To mock the Torah, to mock the Rabbanim, to mock the sages. So they came to Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah and asked him 12 questions. Now I don't remember if it was the last question or one of the questions, but they asked like an annoying question. They said when the dead... when the dead from the desert will rise in Tchiyat HaMetim, will they need to be sprinkled with the water of Mei Chatat? Pretty good question. Because if the bodies will be resurrected, then they will have tumat met, and they have to be sprinkled. But if it's like a brand new body, then there's no tumat met, and they don't have to be sprinkled. And now, okay, question number one. The second question. Sorry. I'm confusing. It's two answers, one question. The question is the dead from the desert, which means all the generation who died in the desert, will need to be sprinkled in Tchiyat HaMetim? Do they have tumat met or do they don't? So Rabbi Yeshua was pretty smart. Very smart, but he knew how to answer, and he answered them with two answers. The first answer is, Lechsheyavo nachkim lahem. When they come, we'll examine them and then we'll know the answer. So they tell him, but we want the answer now. He says, but we have to wait till they come, and then we're going to check them if they have their loose bone. If the loose bone survived in the desert, so they have tumat met, then they have to be sprinkled. But maybe they don't have a loose bone. Maybe it's going to be a brand new creation, as we're going to learn in 20 minutes in Shara Gilgulim, that sometimes it's a brand new body, then there's not going to be tumat met here. And the second question answers that he gave them, L'chshe'yavo Moshe Rabbeinu itam. When Moshe Rabbeinu is going to come with them. What is he going to do with Moshe Rabbeinu? I asked you about the metim in the desert. So he's already telling you, but Moshe Rabbeinu is buried with them. But Moshe is not going to be resurrected in Tchiat HaMetim. He's buried in the desert. So he already kind of flipped the answer by telling them, hey, we have to wait for them actually to come so we can examine to see the body. And maybe he didn't tell them that we're going to have x-ray machines, but he said we're going to examine to see whether, there is an argument if the loose bone is the tailbone, or if it's here, how do you call it? Forgot the name in English. Brainstem? How?
Brainstem.
Brainstem. Some say that's the loose bone, which is here. Some say here. Listen, I'm not going to get into the argument right now. There's difference of opinions. But the point is that Rabbi Yeshua says, let them come, and then we'll examine them, then I'll give you an answer. And the other thing is that Moshe Rabbeinu will come too, and we'll see if we have to sprinkle him or not. Or he will say. Now comes a big question for Rabbi Yeshua. If you don't know the answer, just say, I don't know. Why are you telling them that they're going to come, we're going to examine them, let's wait for Moshe Rabbeinu? Just say, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer. Right? That's what our sage says. You don't know the answer, just admit, I don't know the answer. Next question. So, when really the question is very smart question, and the answer that he tells them, well, it really depends on the loose bone. Now, because the resurrection is dependent on the bone. Saying in other words, and again, that's the answer he gave you, but I'm taking out of this explanation what we want to take from all the questions that we were asking here. That Moshe Rabbeinu ended up staying in the desert. I told you, Hashem told him, you are the head. The body can't be without the head. You can't be without the body. Moshe Rabbeinu had unbelievable self-sacrifice, mesirut nefesh, to the nation for 40 years. Suffered all their nonsense, answered all their questions, led them, prayed for them, appealed in their name, everything. You know what mesirut nefesh is? You know what a sacrifice it is? With all the things that they went against him. How many times, and this might not everybody will relate with, how many times you feel as a parent that you do anything in your power to give anything you can to your kids, and they don't comply, they don't appreciate, they don't thank you, they don't do anything, and you're like, all my life I gave to you. I gave you my sweat. Now I know not everybody will relate, either because they're not parents yet, or maybe they had amazing kids. But the reality is, as a parent, I'm sure you felt that, I gave so much. Now, when you became a parent, did you do a deal with your kids? I'm going to give you so much, but I want to thank you. No. You did that because that's what you were created for, to bring the next generation into the world. To educate another generation, to take another generation and lead them into the path of the Torah. I think Moshe Rabbeinu signed a contract with Hashem. You're getting at the end of the 40 years, $20 million. You're getting a plaque saying you did successful. I think Moshe Rabbeinu had some negotiation with Hashem. What am I getting in return? Moshe Rabbeinu did it because that was what the Master of the Universe wanted him to do, to lead the nation. And why? He was still willing to go and die with them in the desert, so he can. So in his merit, they'll get merit Tchiat HaMetim, that they should be resurrected in the dead. And the message that we're getting here is that in many of the cases, it could be even in all of the cases, you do things to others, and they're not going to thank you, they're not going to appreciate what you said, they might not pay you, they might even go against you and slander you. The bed wasn't comfortable, the food was cold, and she's a horrible host. And really the message that we want to take from that, and that's the true leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu, and what he's showing to us, is that you do things b'msirut nefesh, you do it for the benefit of another person, for them to have their olam haba. Not for you to be thankful, for you to get thanks and gratitude, and you did amazing. So when you ask yourself, do I need to help this person right now? Financially, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. It's not what you get from that. You see another person, the situation is, the Master of the Universe brought you to a situation that you are the one that can inspire, give, and change somebody's life, then you're not thinking, normally you won't think that. You see a house burning on fire, you're thinking, I wonder if the person that I'm going to save will buy me a present. I don't think, I heard he's pretty cheap. I don't think they're going to buy me a present. Let them burn. Chas v'shalom, of course. You see a house on fire, you jump in. You don't question the person. Tell me, how much money do you have before I save you? Same thing here. Moshe Rabbeinu did everything blindly. He wasn't expecting a reward. He wasn't expecting gratitude. He wasn't expecting to be advertised. And he says, I'm willing to stay in the desert so they can have Tchiyat HaMetim, that they should be resurrected. They were bad. Saying, in other words, that each and every one of us, besides it, has the responsibility and the ability to educate, to inspire, to give something to somebody else, is that everything that I do has to be done. I'm doing it l'shem shamayim, b'msirut nefesh. I'm doing a self-sacrifice. I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it because I was commanded, because that's what Hashem wants me to do. If Hashem put me in this situation, that's what Hashem wants me to do. For the benefit of another person. That's why we can conclude by saying, Moshe Rabbeinu, I told you that many, many times. We call him Rabbeinu. Rabbeinu means our teacher. He should have been called Moshe Anavi. He's the greatest prophet at all. He should have been called Moshe HaMelech. But he's Moshe Rabbeinu. Rabbeinu is our teacher. And he teaches us how to behave. Yeah, and sometimes you have to go down for the benefit of somebody else. Sometimes you have to suffer and not get what you want for the benefit of somebody else. That's a true leader. So the Parasha is coming to teach us how to become the true leaders that Hashem wants us to be. Hashem wants all of us to be leaders, all of us to be successful, all of us to be educators. And each and every one of us, in my private domain, I have to figure out who am I leading. Am I leading 3 kids? Am I leading 7 kids? Am I leading a congregation? Am I leading people on the street that are lost and confused in the darkness of this exile? Who am I leading? So we'll conclude by saying 2 things. If you are not even in the path of leading, then this class should be the changing point of your life, that you have to become now a leader. Who are you choosing to lead? That's your decision. Whether it's your children, students, or random people in the street. And if you are already a leader, then you do it not for the getting gratitude, not to being paid, not to say, I did that. Is you do it because you want the benefit of another person to inherit Olam Haba. When you see a person sitting in the street, you have to think, sometimes I see people screaming on the street to other people. Why are you screaming? Not you. Sometimes you hear people, Shabbos! Well, why are you screaming Shabbos? He knows it's Shabbat today. That's how you're going to save the person from his Olam Haba, Shabbos. So we have to understand that when Hashem puts a situation in front of you, Hashem wants you to make a big change. Hashem wants you to be a leader. Hashem wants you to be the one who knows to point out in another person what they can't find in themselves. Our sages say, En adam roe nigei atzmo. I can't see my own faults. But I can also barely see what I'm really good at. Somebody has to come and point it out. And you can be the person that can change another person's life to a point that they merit their Olam Haba. That in itself is sufficient to understand the Mesirut Nefesh of Moshe Rabbeinu saying, okay, I'll stay in the desert. You can put me down in history as that I made a mistake. I don't care. Moshe Rabbeinu says, what's important to me is that I took a generation out of Mitzrayim, I'm with them all the way. For good or for bad. I'm going to lead them all the way. So all that's left is to wish us all to really find our true purpose and to understand that our ultimate purpose is to know how to give whatever we have is to another person. It's to make another person's life a better life. To make another person's olam haba available to them. To make another person believe in themselves and be the person they're supposed to be, even though if it comes on you, so to say, stepping back. Which is the complete opposite of what we saw last week. Korach wanted to move everybody. I want to be the leader. And in this parasha, we see the complete opposite. No, I want everybody to be bad. I'll sit in the back. I'll take the number 2. I'll take the back seat. Hashem should bless us to not only to be able to find our purpose, is to be able to find other people's purposes and to inspire them to be who they are. And by that, we are hastening the coming of Mashiach and making the world a much better place to be. And Bezrat Hashem, the question of these Anshei Alexandria, whether the generation of the desert will have to be sprinkled or not, will be answered very soon with the coming of Mashiach.